Hello everybody, I'm happy to say, as well as pleased to say, that I'm back here again. That's a catchphrase that I think I borrowed off Shane, but I think it's worth telling. It's been about 4 weeks since I did my last YouTube presentation. I would have done one sooner, but unfortunately Shane was unwell, and we kind of run out of the schedules and things like that. We sort of run out a little bit, so we were unable to do it. But anyway, I'm here now, and I'm pleased to say that this should be posted very soon after I've finished this particular presentation. So I've got a stack of new books that I'm pleased to that I'm personally pleased because I'm so passionate and for a collector. I have been watching other book collectors on YouTube, some really interesting ones, and it's always fascinating to see how fascinated they are with the subjects of the type of books like they have and the contents of their books, this inspires me to want to do another, do more videos. I know this one guy, he was in St Andrews in Scotland. That's where he went to school, so he knows all this the history of St Andrews, which is it fascinates me for somebody that has such a passion for St Andrews in Scotland. So and it's all throughout the history of that particular time, like the 1800s, 1700s up to the present day. Whereas I stick from, say, 2014 to 1994. So let's get on with it. This one is a book. It's called Borman's Letters. As Martin Bormann was writing to his wife, who had, I think, maybe 9 or 10 children by him, so he was really busy. And the letters were discovered just after the war, because not only did Martin Bormann die at the end of the war, either he took his own life, or the Russians killed him, or he was struck down by artillery fire or debris from the rubble. But so did his wife. His wife died, and she died of cancer, so she died more or less of natural causes. So his legacy is not only just his him being Hitler's shadow, so to speak, because he was always like a few paces behind him, but of his children, because all his children survived the war. I think they were in Tyrol in Austria or something, so they were very safe. And then one of them always spoke up. He went to schools, and he would talk about the Nazi era, World War II, and that the unfortunate times that they'd lived through would never again be repeated. But if you look at the news today, it's like history is kind of repeating itself, as, with the war in Ukraine, especially Germany's involvement in it. So anyway, this is a book about the letters that they sent backwards and forwards between each other, and they're very heartfelt. They're kind of like typical love letters, almost like what you'd expect a teenager to write. Maybe they wouldn't write letters anymore, they'd send emails. But I always think if somebody were to write a letter, it has a personal touch, because you can see somebody's handwriting, as opposed to reading it off a screen or through a text message, reading it on your phone or something like that. Also, the photographs are very good, because the photographs I've hardly ever seen before. That's one of the great things about photographs, is that you always want to see something you've never seen before. And in this particular book, you do see photographs I've never seen before. So the main reason that I bought this book was to find out any kind of tidbit, any bit of knowledge from the last days of the war. Now, I think they stopped corresponding, as far as this book's concerned, in I think it's April the 4th. April the 4th was the last date, and I was a little bit disappointed by that, because I wanted to see how far they would correspond with each other up to when he was in the Hitler bunker, and especially those last days, say up to April, at least say April 20th, April 22nd, something like that, because at April 22nd, a lot of the Hitler's hierarchy flew the coop. You know, they saw that the Titanic was sinking and they needed to get out of town. But this only goes up to about the 4th of April, so, and that was the reason that I bought it. So the Bormann letters, glad to have it, but maybe, you know, sweet and sour. That's what I would say with this book. It's sweet and sour. Okay, this is another book that I bought, and I bought this because, one, the cover, and because it was cheap. This only cost like £3, and I had to pay £2.80 for the postage. And you can see a Hitler Youth, maybe 11, 12, 13 years old, holding a Panzerfaust, which is a bazooka. I remember when David Cameron was he was Prime Minister, and he was in Germany, and somebody asked him a question about a bazooka, and instead of calling it a Panzerfaust, he called it a Wunderwaffen, and there were people in the audience shaking their head. And he would call them out on it. And he said, well, you know, that's what I thought it was, and clearly I can see that I'm wrong. So no, it's called a Panzerfaust. It's very, very cheap, but at 60 yards, this Panzerfaust could knock out a tank. It did have a shortcomings. Of course it does. Nearly everything has a shortcoming one way or another. It leaves a lot of smoke. So after you fire it, you know, you can see the direction of where it came from. So it gives you a way to the enemy, so they can see, he just fired a Panzerfaust, you know, and they're going to spray the direction of where the Panzerfaust was fired. So what they normally do is they fire it from like bushes, you know, a shrub or something like that, or a protected area, so that you wouldn't see so much smoke after the Panzerfaust was fired. And some of these guys were so good that they would get special badges, almost like Boy Scout badges, where they'd have, you know, where they'd fired the Panzerfaust and knocked out a tank, and they'd have, like, it's almost like notches on a belt, except it was badges on the side of their uniform. And then you can see a guy, you know, clearly hasn't had much sleep, you know, you can see bags under his eyes. I also remember when they were being lined up, and I think it was April 12th, 1945, they were all lined up, and Hitler went to inspect each one and hand out iron crosses, and principally for those that had knocked out tanks. When the Russians actually got into the city centre and they wanted to take the Reichstag, they lost between 800 and 1,000 T-34 tanks, and a T-34 was classed as the best tank during World War II. It was that good a tank because they could make so many of them, and they were very, very effective. And the Russians called these guys bazooka boys. So the downside of having this book is that it's written in French. The second problem with this book is I can't read any French. So I wouldn't be able to, unless I had some AI, you know, app that I could, you know, translate the story, because this is a story. It's not, you know, it's a novel. It's not somebody's memoir or a diary, which would have been a lot more. It would have been a lot more. It would have more value to me if I were to read it
as opposed to reading this novel. But I'm not complaining. I only paid £3 for it and £2.80 postage. So yeah, Berlin Plevia. So it's clearly written by a Frenchman. You can see some French writing at the back there. It's quite thick as well. So yeah, live and learn with that one. Then we come to the Cold War era, and I've got a book here called Price of Freedom. This is a photo, the cover, taken at Checkpoint Charlie, and it's a story about a guy who actually went over to East Berlin to have sneak people across from East Berlin into West Berlin. Now, when you get into the story of Berlin history, there's so many angles and approaches that you can take, which is really interesting because of new discoveries. You want to find out new information about things perhaps you wouldn't otherwise concern yourself with. I don't know if... so say, for example, the escapes. That's one angle. Another angle may be the building of the Berlin Wall. Another angle might be the border guards. Another angle might be the politics of the time. Another angle might be the tearing down of Nazi buildings or Prussian buildings because of political reasons, and so on and so forth. You're always looking for an angle that perhaps, or I am looking for an angle that perhaps I've never come across before. But this is a sort of a well-worn one, so it really is down to the person who experienced it and his writing style. You know, does he tell a great story? Is it really interesting? What is it that why did he do what he did? You know, I believe that this guy eventually became a lawyer, and he wasn't even what they call an echter Berliner. You know, he came from Stuttgart or something, or Cologne or Hamburg or something like that. But he felt it was an obligation and in some ways a duty to go and help these people, from East Germany and East Berlin, to escape to the West. So this is a story about somebody who went across from West Berlin into East Berlin with a car, and he would sneak them over by car through Checkpoint Charlie into West Berlin. And here's the downside. The downside is if you use a car and you put people in the boot of that car, then clearly you will see that there is a lot of weight at the back of the car. So you can see the suspension sort of sinking down a little bit. So anybody like a border guard who is, you know, he's sharp, and he's not one for turning a blind eye. He can see, oh, there's people in the boot. So what they had to do, they had to make sure that they'd have a car that was strong enough that could put people in the boot, but you wouldn't see that it was sort of it was that so much weight was being pressed down on the suspension, so it was sort of dragging a little bit. You'd look at the car and you think, right, there's people in the boot. So you really had to be smart about it. The other thing is you've always got to change your plans. You can't always stick to a particular route. Otherwise, they're going to suss you out. Now, I won't spoil it. I mean, I could. So eventually, this guy was captured, and he was sent into prison. And I think I don't know how long he actually did, but then they did what they call exchanges, where they would exchange political prisoners for currency. So the West German government would buy these prisoners, or they would trade. Say, for example, they would give them, I don't know, so many cows or something. You know what I mean? Like so agricultural or food of a particular type that the East Germans could, or the East Berliners couldn't get. So you say, well, you give us, we'll trade these political prisoners for X and Y in agricultural goods, for example, instead of a currency. Because after a while, the West German government said, no, we're not going to give you currency. We're going to give you, say, agricultural. We'll give you oil or gas or something like that. Something that the East German government needs. And that's how they did. They actually traded political prisoners. So it was a business, effectively. So, yeah, price of freedom. It's about one man's determination to help East Germans and East Berliners get across to the West. Let's see. Now, here, I love surprises. Now, this one is about neoclassical buildings that were constructed in the late 40s and early 50s in East Berlin. This was the showpiece of socialism as it was at the time when Walter Ulbricht was in power. Now, when I got this through the post, I thought to myself, oh yes, it's like one of those surprises that you get. It's almost like on Christmas Day. If you're on Christmas Day and you open up your presents and you get something you really like, and it was better than you thought it was when you got it, or you had an idea of a kind of gift that you wanted, and that gift was better than the thought that you had in your mind. And this was it. This was a lot better than I ever thought it could be. And it comes in this slip case like that, and you've got this. It says DDR, or Deutsche Demokratische Republik Limited. A special life and style of Strausberger Platz, Karl Marx Allee, and in East Berlin. And this is a nice material. It's really nice. It's like clearly a collector's item, and you could pay serious money for this. Now, I paid about £20, and I think, you probably could charge 40 for this, but I was really happy, really pleased to get this when it was a real surprise, almost like a birthday gift when it came through the post. And this is the Karl Marx Allee that was once known as Stalin Allee. So you see these massive, great big neoclassical buildings that you've got there. Really nice. I remember when I first saw it, I thought it just blew my mind. Here is Strausberger Platz, that massive great big roundabout. This is an old photograph, by the way. And here, where I'm pointing, is where they've got a statue, a bust of Karl Marx right in the corner. And my friend Shane, he saw it out of a coach. And when I went there, we've actually filmed it, so I did a presentation from that particular location. And I also remember that there was another tour guide came around. They were on their bikes and they stopped right where we were filming, so I think we had to stop filming until they moved on. So if you ever go to Berlin, you've got to see Karl Marx Allee, and this particular location is called Strausberger Platz. I think if we got some more pictures that I can show you. Here's another one. And this is where they did all those parades, like on the 40th anniversary, the great big thoroughfare where they do the military parades, which was to sort of represent the might of the East German government. I remember there was his name is Mark Reeder, who came from Manchester, and he moved to Berlin in like 1979. And in an interview, I heard him say that he took out his camera to take a photo, and like all these Stasi guys just jumped on him because he took this photograph. But he still has that photo. It's not like they they confiscated it. He has the photo that they wanted to stop him from taking the photographs, but he kept the photograph. He managed to keep the photograph. I don't know how. I never got the chance to ask him, but it's just the tragedy of it. Really is that with my mobile phone, I took loads of photographs when I was in Berlin. When I was at work, I left my mobile phone in the toilet, and when I realised that I'd forgotten it, I ran back, and then when I ran back to the toilet, it was gone. All those precious photographs that I took in Berlin are now lost forever. It's happened to me twice. The last time it was in 87, and I took these precious photographs all along the Berlin Wall. And they're so unique because I took them. It wasn't like somebody else took them. I took those photographs, and now they're lost forever. And it's the same when I just got back from Berlin. I had all those photos on my phone. I left my mobile phone in the toilet, and then when I went to grab my phone, I realised that I'd left it in there. Went back there, and the mobile phone's gone. And it's tragic because it's not so much the mobile phone, because the mobile phone's replaceable. It's the photos, and it's the telephone numbers as well. I'm just, it pains me just to think about the loss. So, yeah, I regret it. But it even hurts more with the loss of those photographs that I took in the 80s. Here's a closer shot of those buildings, and this is where the tiles keep falling off, and clearly those tiles need to be not so much replaced, but they need to be because what happens is when these tiles fall off, they fall down to the ground, so they have to have a protective cover. So that if any tiles fall off from the building, they won't hit anybody on the head. And then you need to have somebody to actually reapply tiles that have fallen off the building. So they wanted to update the buildings, but the people that live in those buildings, they are afraid that if anybody was to take over those buildings in Karl Marx Allee, then the rents would go up. So we don't know if they're reapplying the tiles, because the tiles, I think you could see here, one of the tiles might have been, is actually missing because it's fallen off. But yeah, this is a great book. I'm so pleased that I got it, and it was such a nice surprise to receive it, and it's a fabulous book that I shall treasure. So, Central Berlin, Strausberger Platz. Going back a little bit, this is Berlin's Stunde Null 1945, which is Berlin's 0 hour 1945. And you've got at the back here, it says a lot, where you've got kids playing amongst the ruins. And what must that be like for a child to be playing in the ruins, especially, with health and safety, because you could get debris and, bricks falling down, and and it could fall on somebody's head and kill them. Is a photo of people queuing up for potatoes. I always like photographs that actually say a lot, and they can say more than words ever can. That's a really powerful photo, especially for me it is, because you can get to see how desperate these people were at that time.
Here, for example, and you've got the Trommerfrauen, which means rubble women, where they're doing clearing up the bricks, getting the cement off the bricks, and in order to reuse the bricks to build new houses, new apartment blocks. And with all the rubble, they had to clear it out of central Berlin, and they've got these man-made mountains, and one of them is called Teufelberg. If you've seen all my videos up to this point, you'll know that I've mentioned it before. It's just a man-made mountain of all the rubble that was taken out from the city centre, and they had to put it somewhere. And now there's people do all sorts of, wandering, walking up and running, and flying kites and all that kind of thing on the top of Teufelberg. But the photos are really good. I really like sort of flicking through this book, because pictures can say a lot, and there might be things and bits of information that's in the book that I've never come across before, and that's always something valuable when you're buying books such as these. That building, for example, that's been restored. That I think that might be a church there, and there's one that mirrors it from the opposite side. And I don't think that this building got restored until the late 80s and into the 90s, to be honest. So things like that, if you find information and also captions where you say to yourself, oh, that's worth investigating. And that's Potsdam, meeting at Potsdam with Churchill, and then when Churchill lost the election, it was Attlee, then Truman and Stalin, and that was the meeting at Potsdam. Fascinating. Alright, so Berlin story. Now, when I was in Berlin on the last day, I went to the Berlin bunker. So there's the Berlin bunker, there's the Hitler bunker, there's Nazi bunkers, and then there's Cold War bunkers. So when I say Berlin bunker, it means exactly that. It has nothing to do with the Hitler bunker. So I want to be clear about that, because I mean that can confuse people. This is just a bunker that was Anhalter Bahnhof, which is Anhalter train station. It was a famous train station in Berlin that got badly bombed, but there is like a ruin of it that they've kept. So you can go there. It's it's a tourist attraction, but just behind it, they're going to build a museum, and not far from Anhalter Bahnhof is the Berlin bunker. Now, when you go into the Berlin bunker, they sell a lot of these books for €1. Now, this book is really useful. I actually got this off the internet. I didn't buy it while I was at the Berlin bunker. Maybe I should have, but anyway. What's so unique about this book is there are pictures in here that you cannot take with your mobile phone. You are not allowed to take any photographs when you get into the Berlin bunker. They say you've got to keep it, you've got to keep it in your pocket. You cannot take any photos. But this book has got photographs inside the Berlin bunker. So, say for example, let's look at it. So that's a close up there. There you go. See that? See that there? So you can actually see what the Berlin bunker looks like.
from the outside. Now, clearly, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, but it's the going inside that really, really counts. So there are photographs of what you get to see if you were to go into the Berlin bunker for yourself. This is how it's the outlay of it, the planning, and all the rooms that you can see all the artifacts and what's on display, and they will have like a commentary. You know, you'll get a set of headphones, and then they will actually give it into you, I think, in English and French and German and Italian and that kind of thing. Which one it is? As that now, this is a model of the Hitler bunker, so it's something completely different. And that there is a recreation of Hitler in the Hitler bunker. This one here. This is a recreation. So look how cramped that looks. There's not much room in there. And there's like an oxygen tank just there. So he needed oxygen to be able to breathe. And you've got a picture of or painting of Frederick the Great on the wall there. So you can see how cramped it is. So various, you know, what they've got on display, and so this is a book worth having, simply because you cannot take photos in there on your mobile phone. You're not allowed to. The other thing is, if you're a language learner, you've got it in English and you've got it in German. So you can either read it in German and then read it in English, or you can read it in English and then read it in German. So very pleased to have got this. Perhaps I should have bought it in the bunker when I was there, but now that I have it, I'm glad I've got it. Okay, this is something I don't really know much about. It's all to do with movies that were made in East Germany from 1949 to 1989. And because of the political sensitivities, they would either edit out scenes, you know, like those who are in authority. They would edit out scenes that they didn't like, or they would ban the film. I remember that they had The Magnificent Seven with Yul Brynner and Steve McQueen and Charles Bronson, great, Robert Vaughn, great film, and a guy called Buchholz. You know, it's a name that people can't recall. If they were to name all the famous actors in The Magnificent Seven, his name wouldn't be mentioned. His name is Horst Buchholz. He was a Berliner, an echter Berliner, a real Berliner. And so when they advertised the film, his name was like in bold, because it's like, oh, there's this German, and not only is he a German, he's a Berliner. And so they would show this film in East Germany, East Berlin, to the border guards as a form of protection, of protecting the East German state. And then, because they didn't like what the film, or what they interpreted as Western propaganda, they banned the film. So The Magnificent Seven in East Germany was banned. That's how sensitive they were. And there are films that were made in East Germany that the authorities would want to watch first before they released it to the public. And when they released it to and maybe it did get released to the public with scenes that were cut, or they felt that there was something in the film that they didn't want to have their audience watch, so they would ban the film. And this would happen with East German films as well. So it's only now that we would be able to get to see these East German films, and it's something which is really unique because, you know, the style, the times of which and when they were made gives an insight into East German and East Berlin society as it was then at that time. So this is a book that I haven't read them. You know, I've just got so many of these books, you know, I can only sort of skim through them. But I was happy to get this book because, like I said earlier on in this presentation, there are angles of interest in East Berlin and East German society that I'd like to get into, that I'd like to know more about, but I haven't as yet got into. And this book will open up a lot more information and a point of view that I hadn't previously known about. So, The Triumph of the Ordinary, Directors of Daily Life in East German Cinema, 1949 to 1989. Now, my last book is Kennedy in Berlin. Now, you see here, this is a book which is quite extraordinary if you think about it, because it was about an event that Kennedy had where he spent only 8 hours in Berlin, and he gave that famous speech. Okay, this was a book that I'd ordered, and I don't know what happened to it. It was either lost in the post, it was either stolen, or there was a mix-up at the post office, because I got a ticket that was dropped through my letterbox saying that I should come and collect it, only for me to go down to the post office to find out that they haven't got it. And then I got fobbed off because they say, oh, you know, if you give us your mobile phone number, we'll contact you. And this is the postman who delivers around your area. He'll be able to help sort it out. And and I thought, well, why have I got to be able to? Why is it me that's got to be doing the chasing up? Surely it's got to be your job, because you're the post office. So anyway, that book ended up lost. So I reordered this book from another seller. I bought this book, and I'm so happy to have it because it tells the story of what happened in Berlin at the time when John F. Kennedy landed at Tegel Airport at I think 10 to 9 in the morning. He was in Berlin for 8 hours. He gave that famous Ich bin ein Berliner speech, and then he flew off to Ireland. And it gives you the itinerary of what he did almost from hour to hour when he was in Berlin. And then tragically, when he was assassinated, they had like a plaque and a photo of John F. Kennedy, who it was placed at a particular spot in Berlin where people could lay flowers and leave messages on pieces of paper. And then there was they could go to the cinema to watch John F. Kennedy as he was in Berlin, as he arrived in Berlin, and as he was driven around, as he was escorted by the Berlin police on motorcycles, as he waved to the crowd, as he gave his speech, and then when he eventually left, because from there he flew on to Ireland. And it's one of those blink and you miss it, but if you put the story under a magnifying glass, there's a lot that's going on that's really interesting to anybody that's in Berlin history, as I am. I have to say that I was in some ways impressed by someone who, as John F. Kennedy is, who's a president for peace. that we haven't had anybody like John F. Kennedy since his assassination. And I don't think the powers that be, the elites, the families that help, that run the United States and in some ways the world, want ever to ever see again. They want to pick the people that they want to have become president, and no one else. And if they see another John F. Kennedy, they're not interested. So there's one more book on John F. Kennedy's visit. It's in German. I want to buy it, and once I buy it, I will review it. I'll have an overview of it, and I will present it on my YouTube channel. So that pretty much concludes the presentation that I have to offer. I'm so pleased that I've got to actually do another one of these, because as you can see, there are great big gaps from one presentation to another. However, I hope to actually do a lot more in the future. There's a lot of the ones that we did in Berlin that we haven't released yet. We want to go to Highgate to do Karl Marx. We want to go to the British War Museum. We want to do one on Bomber Harris. We want to do one on George Blake, who escaped from Wormwood Scrubs. And we want to do one on the statue of Churchill with Truman and Stalin, who's not there. So Stalin is actually missing from the statue. So lots of good stuff to come in the future. So if you haven't subscribed, please do, and I'm thankful for those that have subscribed. If you give us a thumbs up, I'll be much obliged, and if you leave a comment, I'll be ever so grateful. So, auf Wiedersehen.